In 1970, when I saw Barbara Loden's film Wanda at the film festival in Venice, I was deeply moved. What prompted Barbara Loden, author, director, and actress, playing Wanda, to make such a radical women's film? In Elia Kazan's film, such as Splendor in the Grass, Barbara Loden embodied the beautiful woman with strong sexual attraction, a wishful projection of male fantasies, both fragile and passionate, similar to Marilyn Monroe. In her film Wanda, Barbara Loden moves away from the female cliché figures of Hollywood films. She plays Wanda as if she were searching for the path leading to her true identity, as if she herself inwardly were a woman incapable of defense and at the same time possessed of a craving for freedom that will not accept adaptation. I wondered even then what made Barbara Loden, married since 1967 to the renowned American director Elia Kazan, make such a self-willed woman's film apart from the mighty Hollywood film industry.
I'm all right now.
Since that time, it was my wish to meet Barbara Loden and to portray her in our film series, Women in Film. It wasn't until 10 years later, though, on May 14, 1980, that Conrad Wickler and I were able to meet with Barbara in New York. She had just finished her theater production, Come Back to the Five and Dime Jimmy Dean, on Off Broadway, and was teaching acting only twice a week at the Lincoln Center. She immediately accepted our proposal to make a film and allowed us insights into her everyday life and work. Speaking about her life, she was amazingly open and direct, the reasons not being revealed to us until 3 months after we finished shooting through a letter by Elia Kazan. He wrote to us, "Barbara thought of your documentary as a very serious opportunity to complete her life. That was exactly it. She knew very well at that time that she did not have long to live. And how she did those dancing scenes and others for your camera at a time when she was not in full strength herself, I don't know. It was heroic of her, but she knew that this was her last chance to make a record about her life, and she did it."
Put that in there, behind that, you know, trying to
Don't be afraid to do it, because later on, we'll see another aspect of you.
Right.
So,
and that was important, because when you said that the other day, I thought, you're absolutely right. You can't get it all in one scene. You got to get, you know, so I'm trying to get that, because I am busy. I have a lot of things to do. They have wasted my time. I call the train station.
we'll do that now.
Okay.
Okay. So let's just come in again.
Barbara Loden died of cancer in September 1980. When we visited her 3 months before, she had already spent 2.5 years fighting her illness. She had consulted many healers, had tried alternative Japanese methods. She had learned to prepare for death spiritually through meditation and to overcome the fear of dying. She wanted to survive at all cost, but she wanted to continue with her art, which was, to the end, of existential importance to her.
That's the first rule you're going to have to learn, my dear. Never exert and never tax yourself. You're going to learn here that virtue, laziness is a virtue. Now, if you're going to come with me, I'm going to explain. I'll show you your room. And then we're going to have a little chat, and I'll explain all the other rules to you, okay? Just come with me.
I teach acting, and one of the first things I do with the new people who come in to study with me, I ask them to tell a little bit about their life and about their background, about their heritage. And it's very important because that's all we have. Whether it was good or bad or whatever it was, that's all we have to draw on, our life experience. And I used to think at one time that I had had a very sad childhood. But now looking back, I'm really glad because it's what makes me what I am. And I accept what I am. I was born in a very small town in North Carolina called Marion, and I lived out in the country in a rural area. My mother and father were separated, and my mother worked in another town, and my father worked in another town. So I lived with my maternal grandparents. I remember I was very lonely because I wanted to be with my parents, and my grandparents were they were very hardworking. They were hardworking people from a puritanical background. They were very religious, and the people around me, not just my family, but the people in that area, were not very demonstrative in any way. Everything was always kept quiet. And I remember that when I was very little, I used to sit behind the kitchen stove all the time, and I didn't really know who I was or what I was doing there. I wasn't that conscious of it, but looking back, I know really what must have been going on unconsciously was, what am I doing here? How did I get into this place? And so you might say I had a little identity problem there. And it's taken me many years to find out who I am and what I'm about. Not that I'm that clear still, but I know a little bit more. And I went to regular school there, and I always liked, when I was a small girl, I liked to read, and I read a lot, and I still do. I've gotten an awful lot from literature, and especially in my later years from the classics, from the great writers. I'm going to read.
The reading sessions in the Kazan house became for Barbara, especially in the last phase of her life, an effective means against the growing isolation in her family. Her husband, the great Hollywood director of the 50s, who had greatly influenced America's cinema with his films A Streetcar Named Desire, Viva Zapata, and East of Eden, and who had been writing bestseller novels since the 60s, also took part in these evenings. It was as if one were exchanging specifically aimed and encoded messages by the mutual reading of one's favorite authors.
An artist is a priest, a divine servant. The Bible says unto the children of Israel, there's a time for everything, a time for peace and a time for war, a time for sorrow and a time for rejoicing, a time for health and a time for sickness, a time for poverty and a time for wealth, a time to work and a time to rest, a time to weep and a time to laugh. Courage. There is a time for our defeats, a time for our victories, on condition that there be a time to look, to listen, to love, to suffer, to endure, to forgive, to learn, to understand, to absorb, to digest, to reflect, to mature, to bloom, to expand, to create, to reproduce, to sow. And then will come the time to reap. That's what Yvette Gilbert wrote for
Right.
the artist. Marco, what are you doing now?
Oh, yes.
Are you in accord with that? Do you agree with that?
Yes, I
Does
do
that
agree
touch
with
you?
that. Yes.
Does that get to you?
Yes. Let Marco read his...
Okay. I woke up this morning to find the stars in my eyes. I gazed out my window at the soft terrain. Will it rain? Will the heavens bestow their anger, their happiness? Who is to say? Not I. Certainly not.
Who wrote
That's
that?
all?
That's Samuel Howard. Well, it's very short.
That's very good. My God, is that...
I happen to know who
That's
the
good.
real author is.
No, Samuel Howard.
Marco wrote that.
You wrote that?
Yes.
No.
Is that in the poetic works of Marco?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, you.
Mark, I'm going to read this because I noticed you were nervous when you were reading your poem. Although it was a very nice poem and you shouldn't be nervous, but I could understand it. But this is a poem by an old-time English poet that's looked down on by many modern critics, but I sort of like him. It's by Rudyard Kipling, and it's called If. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowances for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hate, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your masters, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat these two impostors just the same, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they're gone, and so hold on when there's nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And, which is more, you'll be a man, my son.
When I first came to New York, I had graduated from high school, and I couldn't wait to get to New York. It was so exciting for me, so different from where I was born and grew up. And when I first got here, I spent every day just walking and walking in those terrible high-heeled shoes that we used to wear in those days. And I didn't really know what I was going to do. At that time, I wanted to be an artist. As a matter of fact, I did take art classes in New York, but there wasn't any way I could make a living doing that. It seemed to me the easiest way to make some sort of living was modeling. While I did pinup work, bathing suits for pinup magazines, I did illustrations for detective stories, for True Confessions. And then I got a job as a showgirl at the Copacabana. And I remember I was quite appalled, and I said I could never work in a nightclub. What would people back home think? Mother, must I keep on dancing? They asked me to come and see the show at the Copacabana, and I saw these beautiful girls come out in beautiful costumes. So I went down to audition, and I got the job, and I had never done anything like that. I hadn't danced at all. Some of the girls at the Copacabana were taking dramatic lessons, so I went along with one of the girls to an acting class, and that's how I got into acting, accidentally, because I really never wanted to be an actress.
Besides acting lessons, She had also studied ballet with Maestro Celli for 28 years. She believed that life and spirit were inseparably connected, and that illness and healing were mental processes that could be influenced through the power of positive thinking. She was also sure that people contributed, consciously or unconsciously, to the originating of illness through the suppression of emotions, a decisive factor in the growth of cancer. She was very much aware of her stressful life situation, and along with her difficult relationship to Elia Kazan, felt it was to blame for her illness. Only in the last year of her life did she accept chemotherapy, which allowed her to stay creatively active so that she could be on stage night after night.
I'm interested really in only doing roles that I feel that I can identify with, or that I feel something personal about. And those kind of things are few and far between. And what I've tried to do in my own way is to create my own working situation, not necessarily as an actress, but also as a director. I have had now for some years, I have a workshop where I work with actors, and I put on every year some productions on a very small scale off Broadway. That way I can be my own boss, you might say. I don't have to answer to anyone. I can work the way that I want to, and take the time that I need to take.
Oh, I love you so much.
Somebody might hear you.
No, there's no one around. They're all in back having dinner. You've had yours?
Yes.
They won't expect you then. There's nothing to fear. There's nothing to... I've locked the door.
I don't know.
But you do love me, don't you, Fred? Do you love me? I know, but say so. Say so. I love to hear it.
Of course I love you. You know I do.
Let's find some different things to do. I don't know what y'all are doing. Let's find some different things to do instead of just groping each other. Yeah. Let's break it down a little bit.
But you do love me, don't you?
Find some different things about her that you can touch her, or different parts of her you can love besides just getting into a clinch without... Because once you get in a clinch, there's nothing you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you can do like that. And you can do the same to him, too. Find things that you like about each other. That's good. And then you can talk through that.
But you do love me, don't you, Fred? I know, but...
Wait,
say
give him
so.
time. Give him time. Let him, and kiss her a little bit all over. And on this side over here, too. Show her that you love her. Now you can ask him.
Say it, I love to hear it. Say it.
Of course I love you. You know I do.
Show us some more now.
No, I want you. I know I want you. I can't do that. Come here. We just have to wait. Love when we can for a while. But I promise you, it won't be long. As soon as I pass those engineering examinations, and I will pass them, we'll go away together. I won't be anybody's servant then.
No, Fred. Fred, please, please, take me away now. I mean, tonight, before he comes. You mean the way we touch or
The way you touch.
just on his
Yeah.
peanuts?
I mean, what is it you like about a person? It isn't just the hugging and kissing. You like the way they smell. You like
Oh, yeah.
You like the way their skin feels, like the way their hair feels, things like that. So we just don't get into these clenches and breathe heavily. We want to find different ways of expressing the feeling that you have for each other. What do you think, Robert? What did you started to say something?
I was just saying, it's not... It's like focusing on one thing about her that is very beautiful.
Yes,
That
yes.
is spurring me on.
So you can kiss the eyes, you can touch the eyes. Same thing with the mouth. You know, you can touch it, or you can feel it against a different part of your body instead of just your mouth. So these are some of the things we have to work on at the very beginning. As for love, love is one of those words that really has no definition. And we try to define it. It can mean different things at different times. It's a very general word that covers a lot of ground. I think, to me, love means a concern, a consideration. And I know that when I was very small that the older people around me were concerned. They took care of me in a physical sense. I was clothed and I was fed. But I do feel that there was that lack of demonstration in my family, and I think it's in a lot of families, I'm not the only one, that there was not the expression of it, the overt expression by touching, by hugging, by even giving approval. My mother had to work in another town. I only saw her on weekends. I always hated when she had to leave on Sunday night to go back to work. I always missed her very much. I lived with my grandparents until I was 11, and then my mother was able to take me to live with her then. When I was in my late teens, I guess trying to be independent, I didn't get along with my mother, and so for many years it was rather touch and go. I didn't keep in contact with her, and we didn't get along at all for a lot of times. But a few years ago, my mother got very sick, and she had no one, and so I took care of her, and I spent a lot of time with her, and we talked a lot, and we became very close. This was 2 years before she died, and I talked a lot with my mother in those 2 years, and she talked a lot to me, told me a lot of things, and one thing she told me was, since I was taking care of her, she said, she said, I don't know what I would have done without you. And just think that I tried to get rid of you. And she told me that when she was first pregnant with me, that she had tried to abort me. But I didn't, but then she said that she was glad she didn't. But I didn't feel bad about it. I didn't resent her for that, because I understood what she was going through at that time. She got married when she was very young, and she had 2 children before me, and it really was not a good time to have another baby. This was during the Depression, and she and my father weren't getting along. So I could understand why that had happened. But I was glad that we were able to get back together again, and that we were close. And I was with my mother when she died. And at that time, when she was dying, I knew that she was dying, and I was just sitting with her waiting for her to die, because it was just a matter of a couple of hours. And at the time when she actually died, I didn't really, well, I didn't have any emotion, because I guess I couldn't afford to, it would have been too much. But my mother still, I feel my mother still lives through me, and that I think about her a lot, and I find myself being like my mother, even looking like her more and more as I get older. And I feel very close to her. And sometimes when things happen to me, I still think that I can call her up and tell her, or that I can, to me, she's still very much a presence with me. And I feel this is one thing I was talking about before, about continuity, that life goes on, and that people's lives are not in vain, because I think through what I do, I might be able to help to express some of the things that my mother wasn't able to express in her lifetime, and some of the things that she went through. And so I think that I can help through my own being, to continue my my mother's. I don't consciously do that, but it's just a natural thing that happens, that I really understand her life, as much as I can, and it's part of me. And everything is part of me. It's what I'm trying to, I hope I will be able here and there to express in my work. Not everything at once, but a little aspect of it here, a little aspect of it there. And this is why I want to do what I do. It's very important to me that I get a lot of these things out through my work. Not necessarily in a cathartic sense, but also just as my contribution to life, and to all the people. hard to determine whether one is a good mother or not, but I do know that when my children were very young, right after they were born, I was working a lot, and I did feel very guilty at that time, and I felt very torn between my work and not being able to be with my children enough. And I still feel very bad about that. But looking back, at the time, I really couldn't have done any differently than I did under the circumstances. So I try not to feel too guilty about it. Right now, I feel I have a pretty good relationship with my children. They're very important to me.
Should I do that again or what?
Yes.
Oh. The last time I saw that girl was the summer of '63. It's hard to believe it now, but when she needed me, those were my happiest days.
One evening, when the camera and the sound recorder had been packed, Barbara spoke of the time when she was 23 years old and had fallen in love with Elia Kazan. She felt very inferior in comparison to him, a feeling she could never free herself of, since she longed to be accepted as a human being and an artist, and not only for her looks. Before her marriage, she bore his child, which she raised herself without giving up her theater work. At that time, she played the lead in Arthur Miller's play After the Fall, for which she received a Tony.
One of the roles that, well, I suppose the best role, well, it is the best role that I had was the role of Maggie in After the Fall. And I really felt very personally involved in that. It was based on the character of Marilyn Monroe, but I did not, at that time, I did not really see it that way, because when I read the script for the first time, I felt that it had a lot of my own life experiences in it. And at that time, Marilyn Monroe had not been dead for very long, and I think it would have been wrong to try to imitate her or try to be like her. So I created a third person, Maggie, in the play. And there were a lot of similarities to my own life. A person who was very insecure and felt that she was not educated, that she didn't know very much, and she had a very strong need to be accepted and to have love and to be able to express love. And unfortunately, the people that she came into contact with were not people who could fulfill that in her. I was a member of the Lincoln Center Repertory Company, and all the girls in the company got to meet Arthur Miller and audition for him for the role. None of us had read After the Fall. I was one of the last ones to meet him, and I told him a little bit about my life, and I guess he saw some sort of parallel in it because he wanted me to audition for the part of Maggie. So I was given one scene from the play, still not knowing what the whole play was about. And I worked on that scene, and I did the audition. And in the middle of the audition, Arthur Miller stood up and said, "That's it, you're my Maggie." I felt right away an affinity for the part. On one hand, it was easy for me, and on the other hand, it was very difficult because there were a lot of things in the play that were quite a bit like my own life. And I was working night and day. I never slept for 3 or 4 years. I was a mess. When I was supposedly at the height of my, glory, whatever you call it, I have pictures on the magazines and this and that, how great I was and all that. I was miserable because of too much pressure. Too much pressure. And I was torn every way, The director was Elia Kazan, who later became my husband. Elia and I have known each other for many, many years, and our relationship has gone through a lot of different changes. We've known each other for about 30-some years. So this is not just a short-term knowledge of each other. We know each other pretty well. One thing in particular I remember that I learned from him was I always wanted every night to give my all, to just give everything. And one night he told me, he said, Barbara, there's one thing that you should be aware of, is that people shouldn't feel that you're giving your all, that you're going to the limit. They should feel there's something more there beyond that. So you don't have to reach the top on everything. You don't have to reach the top note on everything. It's like an opera singer singing. You want to feel that they could go on above there, that they haven't just hit their top note. And that was a revelation to me, because I had thought that, I have to give everything every night. And so he helped me to gradate the performance that way.
Yes, she's a wonderful actress. In fact, in her range, everybody only has a certain range, but in her field or in her range, she's as good as there is in this country. She's excellent. She has everything. She has humor, she has emotion, she has sexuality, she has conviction, and she has imagination. And it's a joy to work with her, because she not only doesn't resist, but she makes your direction looks better than it is. She does something that you ask her to do, and it comes out better than you hoped. So she's one of the actors I know. Robert De Niro's another one. There are other actors. There are the new generation. Marlon Brando, of course, was the king of them all. But there are actors who make a director look good. And in Splendor in the Grass, I thought she was absolutely outstanding. She was tremendous in that film. And in After the Fall, too, she was great. She was the outstanding thing in that play. As a matter of fact, I don't think much of the play in the first act, but in the second act, when she comes on, and the play builds on Art Miller's memories of Marilyn, both between she and Miller, they created something excellent. The second act is very good, but she gets a lot of credit for that. Again, there she combines the quality of innocence, sweetness, goodness, and also a sort of absolute toughness. So it's the play between this toughness and this sweetness which she has that I think is very attractive. She's had a tough road in life, but she's made it, and that shows in her performances.
We do have a lot of the same viewpoints about things, and where we differ, I find, is always helpful also. I know when I was making Wanda, I asked his advice about a certain scene, and I said, how do you think this should go? And he says, oh, I think it should go this way and that way. And I said, oh, no, that's not how it should go. But what happened was, by his making a statement that I didn't agree with, it made me more clear about what I really did want to achieve in that scene. So just because people always agree with you isn't always helpful at all.
She doesn't need any help. She needs help to someone to look after her children while she's shooting. She needs help to get a ride to the location in the morning. She needs help at night, somebody to wash the dishes and talk over a thing or two. But she doesn't need any help. She's completely herself. She's not trying to satisfy anyone but herself. She's not a profoundly educated person in the literal or classical sense. She hasn't had a lot of formal schooling, but she's very, very bright and most instinctive. She's what we in America call a natural. She does things almost without cogitation, and they come out absolutely truly. She's about as honest and true a director as I know. She's very simple, direct, and she's always dramatizing her own feelings about something and what things mean to her. She also gets a great deal of pleasure about it, which is a very nice quality about her. Most men, and most women too, most directors, put it that way, tend to get tense. They feel that they're on trial, up against something, but she bustles around with a little pad and so on, and you feel a great relaxation and an air of pleasurability about her. I admire her a great deal. I love her, and I like her, and I respect her, and I try to help her. That is, I look after her children, and I drive her to the location and do all those very useful things that she used to do to me when we started. What else can I say? She's pretty, as you see, which doesn't hurt. She's very good with actors. She's an expert with actors. She has something about her that elicits or arouses emotions in actors in a very natural way. She doesn't bawl them out. She doesn't bully them. She doesn't make them into masochists. It's a sort of a companionable thing that she does with actors, which is very endearing. And they very, very quickly feel relaxed with her. Even strangers on the street, we'll go pick up somebody and she'll start working with them, and this person invites her to a house. If I'm there, me too, and she gets a very good performance out of them, which is a very wonderful quality on location.
I read a story in the newspaper many years ago about a woman who had been an accomplice in a crime, and even though she hadn't really done anything, she was along with the man who robbed a bank, and she hadn't really hurt anyone or done anything. And when she was on trial, the judge sentenced her to 20 years in prison with no appeal. And when he sentenced her, she thanked him. And I started wondering, why would she thank him? Why would she be glad to be put in an institution, into a prison? And I started thinking about what kind of life she had had. And in this article, it did say that she had had children and she had left them, and that she had wandered around, and then she had met this petty criminal and gotten involved with him. And so I had this newspaper article for many years, and then I thought about writing a script on it. At that time, I was not even interested in making a film. I just thought I would write a script about it and try to get it done. So I did write it, and then I had it for some years before I tried to do anything with it. Then I sent it to some directors who liked it, but when I talked to them, I didn't think they really understood what it was really about. They were all men, which wouldn't necessarily make a difference, but they didn't seem to understand what this woman was about. And I would not take it to studios because I didn't really want to work for a movie studio making that kind of film. I wanted to make it in my own way and not have all that kind of pressure. So I didn't know how to go about getting the money. So I was going around asking everyone, do you know anybody who's rich? And I was trying to meet rich people. I didn't have much luck. And then I ran into a friend of mine who had just come here from South Africa, Harry Schuster, and he said, what are you doing these days, Barbara? And I said, well, I'm trying to raise money to make a small film. And he said, well, I'll finance it. How much do you need? Well, I didn't think anything about it, and I came home and I told my husband, I said, Harry said he would finance the movie, but he was probably just saying that. And he says, well, no, if he said it, he must mean it, so call him up. And so sure enough, Harry did mean it, and he put up the money to make the movie. And then I set about finding a cameraman, and I looked at a lot of different people's works, and the one I selected was based on a film that I saw that he made. Of all the films I saw, I felt this person really has some feeling for people, and he knows how to show ugly things without it appearing ugly, the ugly side of life, and somehow it doesn't come over as ugly. Wanda was a woman who was ill-equipped to deal with life. She had no preparation for life. She had hardly any education. She was not particularly bright. She came from very poor working-class people, and she could hardly function even as a working person. She married very young and had several children. There again, she was hardly what would be called a good housekeeper or even a good mother. It's very difficult to direct oneself because as an actress, you should be completely involved in what you're doing. And I found that I had to split my focus between being an actress and being a director. But Nick was very helpful that way because I would always have to ask him afterwards, was that all right? Do you think we got something there we can use? And it was especially difficult because we were working with people who were not actors, because I was always watching them, making sure that we were getting something from them.
Technically, we had just a sound person and a lighting person. And we had no idea of blowing it up even. We shot most scenes with available light. We pushed a lot of the scenes. So there's a sort of grainy quality that adds to the reality. But I think I probably will never be able to make another film under those conditions, and I'll never be able to make a film and have that much fun, because every day we would start from scratch and build something together. I've never experienced that relationship of working with somebody that closely. And that followed into the editing, where it was nobody saw this film. It was something we didn't know. Since I had never made a feature before, Barbara hadn't ever made a film before. We had all this footage, and it was very personal and private. And it was like we weren't making it for anybody else. The first cut was about, I think, 3.5 hours long, and we just sat there and we were numb afterwards. And we weren't moved by it. We just didn't know what to do. And it was actually, I think, when you finish any rough cut, a downer. You really felt quite unhappy. So what we started doing, everything that we shot, we cut. We cut every scenes that were never in the final film. We still cut every scene. We tried to make every scene work. We started taking things out. Then we started taking more things out, becoming much more linear until we finally had our film.
Mr. Dennis?
Yeah. I wrote it all down step by step. Read it. Memorize it, huh? 1, get to the house.
Mr. Dennis?
2, gain entrance.
Mr. Dennis, I can't do this.
Ah, come on.
No, Mr. Dennis, I really mean it. I can't do it.
What do you mean you can't do it?
Just what I've been trying to tell you. Can't do it.
You can do it.
I can't.
You can do it.
I can't.
You can.
I can't.
You can.
I can't.
Now, here. You take this and memorize it. Come on. There. Now, go ahead.
I can't.
She drifted from one situation to another, from one man to another. And finally, she met one person who seemed to care, even though his concern was out of his own neuroses of being an authoritarian figure, of having to have everything his own way, and dominating her.
Wanda?
Even though he was, let's say, even mean to her.
Wanda?
She took that as, at least it was a form of attention, that someone cared what she did, and that meant a lot to her. And that's why she attached herself to this Mr. Dennis, this petty criminal, because he told her what to do and what not to do, which was, to her, it was the first person who seemed to care about what she did.
Wanda.
As a matter of fact, we had to deviate a lot from the original script because since we weren't using actors, I wanted to get real people, real faces, and since we weren't using actors, I found that the real people couldn't always do what was required of them in the scenes. So I would have to use them as best I could and somehow try to get it to fit into the story. So the movie started taking on a life of its own, which really didn't have anything to do with the original script. But it was very, I think one reason that I could be the actress and the director in that particular film was because of the nature of the role. It was a very passive role.
Drop it. Drop it. Drop that gun. Drop it. Drop it. Come on, stand back. Stand back. Okay, it's all over. Come on. Come on. Come on.
I get like that sometimes, like Wanda was, you know, where I sort of, I don't have myself. I'm sort of floating, detached from any sort of security.
We have a schedule now for this through the 25th. And the thing that moves me so much about this Sonio piece is that, as I told you when we first began rehearsing it, I've never seen it make sense. And it doesn't make sense even as written, because I feel that to an extent it was...
In June 1980, Barbara worked with her acting teacher, Paul Mann, on a one-act play by Eugene O'Neill. She wanted to show it on off-Broadway in the fall, working as producer, director, and leading actress all in one. In this play about the loneliness of the wife of a writer, she discovers again her own life situation.
If we turn this around and show it as a woman, a plain woman who loves a man very much, exploited really by the super intelligence of these intellectuals of the village of that era, then we see what actually, I think, was a deep element in O'Neill's work, because O'Neill was very concerned about the whole question of the exploitation of a woman in a certain degree, and he showed it in several of his plays. But here it focuses in a wonderful way, and when I suggested to you that she be of Irish working class stock, aside from the fact that's a wonderful stretch for you, I think it will give a special insight also into O'Neill's background.
Yes.
Do you think, for instance, that he has led her at all into any contact with his writing? Because at one point she refers to the nature of his writing. So he probably has read some of the things.
I think perhaps when they were first sweethearts,
Yes.
that probably she liked his writing, whether she understood it or not.
She thought it was wonderful.
She thought it was something wonderful.
Yes.
Right? And but I think she's grown, and now it's become like her enemy, because it's the thing that takes him away from her. One of the things that takes him away from her.
And also he's found other women who,
Yes.
who find this writing marvelous.
Yes.
And she finds it, as she says at one point, that it makes no sense. It makes no sense.
So the things that originally attract one to another person are sometimes the very things that become their enemy, that become the alienating influence in the relationship. And I think, well, the way that we work is we always go back and start with when things were good, and get that very clear for ourselves, and then we arrive at when things began to go bad.
As written, she sounds like a screaming shrew.
This performance never took place. Barbara Loden died September 5th, 1980, at the age of 48. Paul Mann wrote to us afterwards. On Sunday, August 31st, 1980, Barbara and I had a very long talk. She seemed to want particularly to review the 28 years of her life since we met. She spoke softly. The life of theater people is hard. It's terrible for almost everyone. My life was hard, too much of the time, too hard. One shouldn't have to work so hard against so many obstacles in order to succeed, even a little. So much I didn't get done that I wanted to do. I wanted to direct films, plays. We couldn't finish our work on the O'Neills' play. I had no energy. And there's so much I didn't achieve, but I tried to be independent and to create my own way. Otherwise, I would have become like a Wanda, all my life just floating around. I've made my peace. I'm not afraid of death. If I have to, I'm ready to die. I can go.
And that's what I think we have to try and do.